Right. So to go over the scriptures, I chose to go over the scriptures in Esther in the Bible. Read the story about Esther and how the day of Purim came about, so that we can understand and see that our duties as a woman and our duties as women, and it's true, go beyond just being at home. For those that are married, it goes beyond just being a housewife or being the duties at home. With that too, we also have to be edified and know that it goes beyond. It goes as far as doing the work of the Lord as well. And so in this story, it also gives us understanding of why we keep the day of Purim, but also gives us understanding and gives us edification on how the Most High can use us as women as well. So we'll start at Esther in the Bible, chapter 1.
Esther 1:1. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this is Ahasuerus which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia, over 127 provinces, that in those days when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan the palace, in the 3rd year of his reign he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and princes of the provinces being before him. When he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty many days, even 184 days. And when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan the palace, both unto great and small, 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace.
Right, so this was Ahasuerus. He reigned in India, from India into Ethiopia. So that's a great way off from India to Ethiopia. So he was like the king, which was like the president of over that province. So read on.
Where were white, green, and blue hangings fastened with cords of fine linen and purple to silver rings and pillars of marble. The beds were of gold and silver, upon a pavement of red and blue and white and black marble.
So it's describing all the things that were in the feast, all the decorations and how the room was, coordinated with colors and things like that.
And they gave them drink in vessels of gold, the vessels being diverse one from another.
Diverse is another way of saying they were different. So each person had a different vessel.
And royal wine in abundance according to the state of the king. And the drinking was according to the law. None did compel. For so the king had appointed to all the officers of his house that they should do according to every man's pleasure.
Meaning they was allowed to do whatever they wanted.
Also Vashti, the queen, which made a feast for the women in the royal house, which belonged to King Ahasuerus.
So Vashti was the wife of Ahasuerus. So she made a feast for the women in the royal house. So that she made some things go on, made a feast where all the women gathered together.
On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Biztha, and Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcass, the 7 chamberlains that served in the presence of Ahasuerus the king, to bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal, to show the people and the princes her beauty, for she was fair to look on.
Right. So chamberlains is another word for saying Enoch, and we know that Enoch is men that haven't that were virgins that haven't had a woman, haven't had sexual intercourse with a woman. So he told them to go get the wife and go get the queen, which was Vashti, which was his wife, and bring her before the king with the crown. So because she was a fair-looking woman, he wanted to, show everyone the glamour and the glory of his wife. Read on.
But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment. By his chamberlains, therefore, was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him.
Right. And so it says, but the queen Vashti refused to come. So when the chamberlains came to, to get her and give her commandment that the king had wanted her, she refused. So sometimes we have to look at that situation and make sure that this isn't us, because something's going to happen in the eyesight of the king. That was very, very disrespectful. And for those that are married with husbands, in the midst of us doing things, we have to make sure that we don't set the same example. When we call, even in the midst of us doing something, we need to make sure that either we stop and take heed or send words to let know that, yes, I'm on my way or something like that.
Then the king said to the wise men, which knew the times, for so was the king's manner toward all that knew law and judgment. And the next unto him was Karshena, Shepher, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marshena, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, which saw the king's face, and which sat the first in the kingdom. What shall we do unto the queen Vashti according to the law? Because she has not performed the commandment of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlain.
Right, so now they're taking counsel. They're asking one another what should be done for her not performing the law. And so we have, there are laws. I'm getting tongue-tied. There are laws and commandments in the Bible that we as women are to follow when it comes to us obeying our husbands. Same thing with you children. There are laws and statutes and commandments that you guys have to follow when it comes to serving and applying the scriptures towards your parents. Read on. So I'm saying the same thing to you children, because you are going to be you're going from children to women. And so with that state of mind, you have to learn to be able to follow commandments, follow directions, follow instructions from the beginning, whether it's to your parents, I lost train of thought. That habit is what I'm looking for. That habit of, following instructions the first time will be a good habit to follow. So once you learn the commandments and learn the scriptures, if it's the Lord's will that you become married, then you'll understand and know the importance of what you need to do as a woman, starting at the state as a girl. Read on.
And Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Vashti the queen has not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes and to all the people that are in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus.
Why?
Because by listening to her husband, she showed a bad example to the other princesses. So not listening.
So did she show an example just to the princes?
No, to their wives.
To their wives, exactly. Read on.
For this deed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes. When it shall be reported, the king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she came not. Likewise shall the ladies of Persia and Media say this day unto all the king's princes, which have heard of the deed of the queen, thus shall there arise too much contempt and wrath. If it please the king,
right. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Right. So a lot of times, like you hear people say, that example is set. So classes before, where it was taught that what one person do can set an impression on the next person. So, a lot of times we may not know that what a person is doing is setting an impression on us, but when you begin to do something that you saw somebody else do, it was left an impression, and it was left an impression that what they did was okay for you to follow. So this is the same thing that's going on with the Queen Vashti. So they're saying, listen, if we don't do something about it, then she's going to set an impression on the other women and let the other women know, or set an example and say, hey, this is okay, this can be done.
If it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before the king Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. And when the king's decree which he shall make shall be published throughout all his empire, for it is great, all the wives shall give to their husbands honor, both to great and small.
Right. So they set that example so that the women can feel that, listen, if you step forward and not perform the commandment of the Lord, or you step forward and not apply the scriptures to where you don't listen to your husband, this same thing can be done to you. So with everybody knowing, with all the women knowing that without listening, without following commandment, without following what's being told of you, the instructions that's given to you, these things can fall upon you. And so it set forth an example to all the other women, which caused the women to do to kind of fear. Read on.
And the thing pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. For he sent letters into all the king's provinces, into every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and that it should be published according to the language of every people.
Right, so they sent it out to every people, every language, because they needed to send it out in every language, because there were also Israel that was scattered amongst them. So that's why they sent it into every language as well. Read on.
Chapter 2, verse 1. After these things, when the wrath of the king Ahasuerus was appeased, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what was decreed against her. Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, let there be fair young virgins sought for the king.
Right, so now he's going upon and taking another wife. So that Vashti, not put to death, but she got put away. She got put away where they follow the law, where it says that a wife give her something to give her divorcement and put her away. So that's what happened to Vashti. So now he's looking for another wife, a virgin. They look for all virgins, someone that is appeasing to the eyesight of the king. Read on.
And let the king appoint officers in all his provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather together all the fair young virgins unto Shushan the palace, to the house of the women, unto the custody of Hesh the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their things for purification be given them.
So they took the women, they took them and gave them certain things for purification, where they go and set themselves apart and go through a cleansing and all of that. Definitely. He was remembered where it says the Persian and the Medes. The Persians and the Medes are the ones with the dot, those people. They're like India, from India. Right. The West Indians or the East Indians, right. So you know how you see the women and they all covered up? You know, with the dot. Right. That's what those are. Read on. You understand? Another question? Okay, read on.
And let the maiden which pleases the king be clean instead of Vashti. And the thing pleased the king, and he did so.
Right, so they went through a purification. Purification is another word for saying a cleansing and things like that. And so they were going to bring all the women in front of the king, and whichever woman that pleased the king, which, the king liked, in other words, they were going to make her the queen. Read on.
Now in Shushan the palace there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shemi, the son of Kish, and a Benjamite.
Right. So inside of Shushan, remember they in between Persia, India, and Ethiopia. So remember I said that. Remember they sent that letter out, and they had to send the letter out in different languages and stuff like that. Well, they did that because the children of Israel were scattered amongst the other people. So we had our people that were scattered between India and Ethiopia. So Mordecai was a Jew. He was one of the children of Israel. So he was from where it says at the bottom, the ending of 5, it said a Benjamite. Benjamin was one of the tribes of Israel. So he was from one of the tribes of Israel, which was Benjamin. So read on. So it's describing Mordecai and where he came from and things like that.
Who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity, which had been carried away with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away.
So Nebuchadnezzar came with the children of Israel. They took them into captivity. So they went into captivity. And the only way the children of Israel went into captivity or will go into captivity will be because
they sinned against the Most High.
They sinned against the Most High. Whenever the children of Israel sin against the Most High, they send them into captivity. They went into captivity up under the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. Read on.
And he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther.
Right. So Hadassah, that is another name, which means Esther. He brought up, meaning Mordecai raised Hadassah. Hadassah and Esther are the same people. So Mordecai raised Esther. Read on.
His uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter.
Right. So he took her after her parents died. So Mordecai, Esther's father was Mordecai's uncle, which would make Esther his what? His cousin. Esther's father was Mordecai's uncle, which would make Esther his what? His cousin.
Right.
So after after Esther's parents died, Mordecai took her in and raised her as his own daughter. So just think about it. That has to be, Mordecai had to be a grown man at that time. And Esther had to be young. So he took her in and raised her as his own. Read on.
So it came to pass when the king's commandment and his decree were heard, and when many maidens were gathered together unto Shushan the palace, to the custody of Hagar, that Esther was brought also unto the king's house, to the custody of Hagar, keeper of the women. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her things of purification, with such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens, which were meet to be given her out of the king's house, and he preferred her and her maids unto the best place of the house of the women.
So, Esther found favor in whose sight?
Mordecai. Hagar.
Because Hagar was the keeper of the women. And so when he came, remember, she was a fair woman. But she found favor in Hagar's eyesight. And so when that happened, he gave her the best of the best. He gave her the women. He kept a close eye on her. So you know how, remember, up in the beginning, he appointed his chamberlain to go out and get virgins, right? So when Hagar, he was the keeper of the women. He was the person to look over the women. So when he saw it, he's like, oh, okay, this one right here. So he was part of that plan to come in and bring the women in too. So if you see somebody that has favor in your sight, you're gonna make sure, like, we're gonna keep her. This is somebody that, I think will do the king well. So that's how she became, he has some faith over him too. So he'll go tell his next man, you know what, I think we should pick this sister right here. She this and she that. So she found favor in the eyesight of Haggai. Read on.
Esther had not shown her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it.
To show her what? That she was going in under the king. So he told her, listen, don't tell nobody, don't talk to nobody, this is what we're going to do. So Mordecai had a plan of his own. So he told Esther. So that's another example for you children. That when you give in commandment from your parents, you need to make sure that you're following those things through. Because he told her, listen, don't tell nobody. So even though that was her cousin, he raised her, took care of her. She looked at him as a what? A father. So she had respect unto him. She respected him enough as a father. So that's the same way, that's another example that we can pick up from there. Those things, when people instruct us and lead and guide us on certain things, we need to make sure that we carry those things out because there's a reason behind why we're being instructed to do things a certain way. Read on.
And Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women's house to know how Esther did and what should become of her.
Right, so he was checking on her, in other words. He was going by every day to make sure she was okay. So he didn't just put her in there and leave her. He made sure that, you know, that she was doing the things that she was supposed to do. That kind of puts you in the mind of the scripture that says to know the state of thy flock. That we're supposed to know the state of the flock. Read on.
Now when every maid's turn was come to go into King Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months, according to the manner of the women, for so were the days of their purifications accomplished, to wit, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with other things for purifying of the women.
Right. So they went in 12 months. That's a whole year. They went in. That's the days of their purification, and then 6 months with oils, and then 6 months with sweet odors. So they had to go through some oil purification and some sweet odors. Sweet odors is another word for like perfumes and things like that. So read on.
Then thus came every maiden unto the king.
So one by one, they went into the king to be showed, to be talked about, to be, you know, for the king to look upon, and for the purification. Purification, one of the sisters asked, what did I mean by purification? Purification is another word for saying put away in, what word did I use? Purified, made clean. So they had to go through a cleansing state where they cleanse their bodies and things like that. Go ahead.
Then thus came every maiden unto the king. Whatsoever she desired was given her to go with her out of the house of the women unto the king's house.
Right. So when all the women, when it was their turn, they were given whatever they wanted to take with them to the king's house. Whatever they wanted to take with them, it was given. Read on.
In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women to the custody of Shashka, the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and that she were called by name.
Right, so they all went into the king in the evening and came out the next morning. And they all became like, they were all kept in the house of the concubine. Concubine is another word of something, like wife or something like that. So it says she came in unto the king no more. So she never went into the presence of the king unless she was called. Read on.
Now when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter.
Right, so it was Esther's turn.
Was come to go in unto the king. She required nothing but what Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. So Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus into his house, royal in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebet, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther above all the women.
Right, so above all the women that came in unto him, that came in to see him, he said the king loved her above all of them.
And she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all of the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti.
Right, so when he saw her and he looked upon her, he immediately, she found favor in his sight. So he loved her. So he put the crown upon her head. So he made her the queen. So Vashti was no longer the queen anymore. Now it's Esther. He made Esther the queen. Read on.
Then the king made a great feast unto all his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast. And he made a release to the provinces and gave gifts according to the state of the king.
Right, so he made a big feast, like a wedding feast. Read on.
And when the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai sat in the king's gate. Esther had not yet shown her kindred, nor the people, as Mordecai had charged her. For Esther did the commandment of Mordecai, like as when she was brought upon with him.
Right. So it says Esther had not showed her kindred nor her people, because remember Mordecai told her not to show her people, not to say anything. So it says, and Esther had not showed her kindred nor her people, as Mordecai had charged her, meaning for Esther did the commandment of Mordecai, meaning she listened and followed the instructions that Mordecai had given her, like as when she was brought up with him. So the same way she kept the commandment and listened to him as she was coming up, as he was raising her. Now she's grown. She's a grown woman, and she still keeps the commandments the same way that she kept it when she was a little kid. With respect, she listens to everything that Mordecai told her. So that's another example for us. We need to learn. We learn to listen to the people that instruct us and give us advice and things like that. Read on.
In those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains, Bigthan and Teresh, of those which kept the door, were wroth and sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. And the thing was known to Mordecai, who told it unto Esther the queen, and Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name. Right.
So when he found out Bigthan and Teresh were chamberlains that belonged to King Ahasuerus. They were with him, but wrath meaning angry. Wrath is another word that means angry. So when they got angry and was full of wrath, it got word to Mordecai that them two had a problem with Ahasuerus. So he told it unto Esther, and so Esther to tell it unto the king. So she did just that, just like he told us in the king's name. I mean, in Mordecai's name, which means that she told the list. This came from Mordecai. Read on.
And when inquisition was made of the matter, it was found out, therefore, that they were both hanged on a tree, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king.
Okay. Read on.
Chapter 3, verse 1.
23.
Yes.
Go ahead, Chloe.
Chapter 3, verse 1. After these things, did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advised him, and set his seat above all the princes that were with him.
Right. So now after all of that happened, and they took and hanged the two on the tree, they put them to death. They promoted the King Ahasuerus promoted Haman. Read on. Meaning he gave him another position. Go ahead.
And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence.
Right. So Mordecai didn't bow down to Haman when he came out. Like a lot of times how you see people on television and they go through when, like, the judges will stand up, or when they how they say all rise and things like that. They didn't. That showed a sign of respect, and so to them that showed a sign of respect. But when it came, when the king came out, or when Haman came out, Mordecai never stood up. He stayed seated whenever he saw them, and so because of that, that made Haman upset. That made him mad because he felt that was disrespectful, because they felt that when you stand up, that was a sign of respect, to stand up and acknowledge the person when they come. So that is where they get that from in the court system, where they say, all right, it shows respect to the judge and things like that. Go ahead.
Then the king's servants, which were in the king's gate, said unto Mordecai, Why transgressest thou the king's commandment? Now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matter would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath.
Right. So when he saw that Mordecai didn't stand up or bow down to him every time he came through, it made him upset even more. So he was full of wrath. Why? Because the scripture said that not to bow down myself to them or serve. So that's another sign that in Exodus, where the Most High says in the commandments, Exodus 20, where it says not to bow down myself to them nor serve them, talking about the other gods. So when you bow down to somebody, when you give them respect unto that, that's you putting them ahead of you. So the Most High. So that's another reason why Mordecai didn't do it, because he remembered the commandment that came from the Most High, where it says, don't bow yourself to them. So he had respect unto the law, that's the commandments of the Most High. So read on.
And he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had shown him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of the Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai.
Right. So he got so angry that he started, he wanted to lay hands on Mordecai. Like on the movies where they have like different movies when they do a fasting. So the fasting movies, when you don't like somebody, you know everything about them. You know about their kids, where they live, where they work, where they vacation. So in movies like that, they show you those types of things, and they wondering like how you know so much about him. So that's what happened with Mordecai. Mordecai was like, they knew everything about Mordecai and his people. Remember, Esther was told not to show the people. So that's an indicator that Haman had to ask questions about Mordecai, where he's from and things like that. Read on.
Verse 7. In the first month, that is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of the king Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day and from month to month, to the 12th month, that is the month of Dar. And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, There is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people. Neither keep they the king's law. Therefore, it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. If it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hand of those that have charge of the business, to bring it unto the king's treasury.
Right. So it says, and Haman said, I'm back up at 8, and Haman said unto the king Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of their kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people. So that goes to show you that the children of Israel had a difference between what they supposed to do was different from what the other nations were supposed to do. So that's the same thing with today. When it said that we're supposed to be different from the other nations, meaning we're not supposed to, be the same with the other nations, do the same thing that the other nations do. Our actions and our ways of life is supposed to stand out differently from the actions and the ways of the other nations. So it said, so that meant that the people, they saw that their laws were different. That the things that the people, the children of Israel was doing were totally different. They wasn't trying to keep the law, keep the ways of the other nation. They wasn't trying to do the same thing that the other nation was doing. So that's another thing that we need to, that's something else that we can look at and say, hey, you know what, our actions and the things that we do are supposed to be different. It's supposed to show a difference between what the other nations are doing. Read on.
Verse 10. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy.
Right. So they took the king's ring. The king's ring was a seal to show the king's approval. So he came to the king with this bright idea to get rid of the children of Israel, and he took the ring to seal it. So when they sent the letter out, when everybody saw the seal of the king, they knew to follow those commandments. Read on.
And the king said unto Haman, the silver is given to thee, the people also, to do with them as it seemeth good to thee.
Right. So the king gave Haman power to do whatever he wanted to do with the children of Israel. Read on.
Then were the king's scribe called on the 13th day of the first month. And there were written according to all that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants and to the governors that were over the every province, and to every ruler of every people of every province, according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language. And the name of the king of Ahasuerus was it written and sealed with the king's ring. And the letters were sent by post into all the king's province to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to take the spoils of them for a prey. Right.
So they sent out a decree to try to destroy the children of Israel. Everywhere the children of Israel, somebody was trying to, they tried to destroy the children of Israel. So that's another, indicator that we should be looking out and making sure that we do follow the laws, statutes, and commandments, because as long as we keep the commandments, the Most High Christ is always there with us. Read on.
The copy of the writing for the commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people that they should be ready against that day. The post went out, being hastened by the king's commandment, and the decree was given in Shushan the palace. And the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city Shushan was perplexed.
Man, they was all in an uproar, confused, like astonished, like really what's going on? Read on.
When Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth with ash, and went out with a loud and bitter cry. When Mordecai perceived all that were done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth with ash, and went out into the midst of the city, and cried with a loud and bitter cry, and came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there were great mourning amongst the Jews, fasting and weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes.
Right. So the children of Israel, when something happened, they all would put on sackcloth and ashes. That represents, sorrow. So they all would do that just before they all went down to pray in front of the Most High. So I guess, yeah.
What's the sackcloth?
What is the sackcloth? It is some type of covering. So it's like they put on a covering, not on their head, but on their body. They took off the regular clothes. It shows not purification, but a form of cleansing themselves too, as far as going into the sight of the Most High. Like, remember in the story with Moses, where he went to pray, and the ground that he stood on was holy. So it was first he had to take off his shoes and things like that. So when they took off their clothes and put ashes on their heads, that was their way just before they go down and pray, and it showed subjection unto the Most High. That's what I was looking for.
So Esther's maid and her chamberlain came and told it her. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she sent remnant to cloth Mordecai, and to take away his sackcloth from him, but he received it not.
Right. So she tried to, console him from afar off. So she sent different clothing for him, but he wouldn't take it, because at that moment, that was his way of getting the attention of the Most High, the Most High in Christ. So remember, it says that they all went through fasting and weeping and wailing. So they all went through a fasting period. They're fasting and praying and asking the Lord for forgiveness, just like we do. When something goes wrong in our life, the first thing we do, we go down, we hit that knee, and start praying and asking the Lord for his help. Read on.
Then called Esther for Hathach, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment for Mordecai to know what it was and why it was.
Right. So they gave her they appointed a person that always followed Esther wherever she goes. So she sent commandment for him to tell him to come and send word to Mordecai and find out what's going on. Because remember, she inside of the king's palace. She's not knowing what's going on outside the palace, because she's not knowing what's in store with Haman. So she sent word to find out through Mordecai, find out what's going on. Read on.
So Hathach went forth to Mordecai unto the street of the city, which was before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, and of the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasury for the Jews to destroy them. Also he gave him a copy of the writing of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them, to show it unto Esther, to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king to make supplication unto him, and to make request before him for her people. And Hathach came and told Esther the word of Mordecai. Again Esther spake unto Hathach, and gave him commandment unto Mordecai. The king's servants, all the king's servants, and the people of the king's province do know that whatsoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law to put him to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden sculpture, that he may live. But I have not been called to come unto the king these 30 days.
Right. So Mordecai sent word to Esther that she needs to go in and talk to the king. Well, Esther was trying to tell Mordecai, well, listen, it's a certain way that anybody can get in and talk to the king. But she was saying, listen, the only way that I can get in there is except he called me. So now she's letting him know that's the dilemma that we at. So now Mordecai is going to give word back to her on what she should do. Read on.
And they told to Mordecai Esther's word. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise with the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom in such a time at this.
Right. So he was like, listen, don't think that because some things here that happened to the children of Israel that you're about to escape that wrath too. He's basically telling her, remember where you come from. Think about all your people. If they go down, you're going down too. So he was telling her, listen, from one place to another, but thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. So she's saying, listen, you and your father's house is going to be destroyed. Your father's house is talking about the people of your nation. Everybody is going to be destroyed in that situation. So it says, and who knoweth, right. So he said, and who knoweth whether thou, meaning how do you know that you wasn't put in this situation from the Most High to deal with this situation right here? So that's a situation, that's something that we all can look at. We never know the reason on why we are put in certain situations. We have to take, you know, the instruction, the advice of counsel, and understand that, listen, everything is for a reason. Take what the good and the bad with situations, because sometimes we be put in situations and not knowing. It may be an uncomfortable situation. We may not want to be in that situation at that time, but we all have to trust in the Most High Christ, because the Most High Christ put us through situations for a reason, and it's our responsibility to stick in that situation to get whatever we're supposed to get out of it. Because in every situation, the Most High has put us there for a reason, for us to learn, or for us to show another person. And that's with everything in our life. That's with anything in our life. Whether we leave one job and get a new job, whether we become unemployed, whatever the situation may be, we need to take that, hold on to it, and learn from it, and get whatever the Most High is trying to give us out of it. So he asked her, he said, and who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? This is a reason why you are here. Read on.
Then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer. Go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maiden will fast likewise. And so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him.
Right. So they all went into a fast together. So she like, fast with me, we're going to pray, and this is what we're going to do. And I'm going to take your advice, and I'm going to do exactly what you asked me to do. And whatever happens, if I perish, I perish. If I don't, I don't. Whatever happens to me is going to happen to me. So that is an example of faith. And that's something that we can get from that and learn from that and add to our life. Sometimes, we get to a situation where we don't understand. We get to an alterating point in our life, and we begin to lose faith. And we don't trust in the law. We don't trust in the Most High and His laws. Well, with that example, that shows that, listen, we have to build our faith. Let's step out on faith and trust in the Most High in Christ, that when things happen in our lives that can be altering, the only thing we can do is have faith in the Most High. That if it's something that's bad, the Most High is not going to allow it. But if it's something that we need that's going to help us learn in this situation, then go ahead and do it and have faith that the Most High is going to see it through. Read on. King.
Esther 5:1. Now it came to pass on the third day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner city of the king's house.
Inner court.
And stood in the inner court of the king's house, over against the king's house. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over against the gate of the house. And it was so, when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. Then said the king unto her, What wilt thou, Queen Esther, and what is thy request? Is it shall be given thee to the half of the kingdom?
It shall be given. It shall be even given thee to half the kingdom. So he asking her, what is it that she wants? Ask whatever she wants, even to the half of the kingdom. So if she'd ask for half the kingdom, he like, you'll get it. Read on.
And Esther answered, If it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for them. Then the king said, to Haman to make haste, that he may do as Esther had said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared.
So she had an idea. She went forth and put together a banquet and told and invited the king and Haman. So remember, if this wasn't something that was naturally done, they probably would have been looking at her like she was crazy. But remember, in the beginning of the story, the king, he made a feast, and the queen, she made a feast. So there was two different feasts going on. Read on.
And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? Even to the half of the kingdom it shall be performed. Then Esther answered and said, My petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come into the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will go tomorrow and I will do tomorrow as the king has said. Then went Haman forth that day joyful and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up, nor moved for him, for he was full of indignation against Mordecai.
Right. So at first he came out joyful. And so when he saw Mordecai, and Mordecai once again didn't acknowledge him, he was full of indignation. He was full of wrath all over again. So he had great hatred for Mordecai and the people because Mordecai didn't stand when he approached or when he came up. He felt like that was disrespectful. Read on.
Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself, and when he came home, he sat and called for his friends and Zeresh his wife. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches and the multitude of his children and all the things wherein the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him above the princes and servants of the king. Haman said, moreover, Esther the queen Haman said, moreover, Esther the queen did let no man come with the king unto the banquet that she prepared for myself. But myself.
Verse 12. Haman said, moreover, So he's like, listen, and even Esther, the queen, did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared but myself, meaning she didn't invite no one else but me. And tomorrow I am invited unto her also with the king. So he telling this to his family, like, man, listen. He all happy. He like, listen, this is what's going on. This what happened. When we get home from work or something, we tell him what happened to our day, with our day. Hey, this happened, that happened. So he like excited because he like, listen, I'm about to be promoted to a whole different level. So of course you tell your parents you got a raise, you got a new job, you got a new position. You ready to tell the whole world that something good is happening. So that's what's going on with Haman. Read on.
Yet all this availeth me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate.
So he's like, man, this don't mean nothing as long as I see Mordecai, because he feels, man, disrespected ain't even a word he can probably describe how he feels with Mordecai. But that's hatred, all because Mordecai won't acknowledge his coming. Read on.
Then says Zeresh, his wife, and with all his friends. Then says Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends unto him, let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and tomorrow speak unto the king that Mordecai may be hanged therein. Then go thou and merrily with the king unto the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made.
Right, read on. I read. Chapter 6, verse 1. On that night could not the king sleep, And he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. So that night after Queen Esther came in, the king, this is the king Ahasuerus, he couldn't sleep, so he asked them to bring in the Chronicles, the book of Chronicles. And it was found written that Mordecai had told Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hand on the king's tablet. So those two were going to put to death the king. And so when it was told unto the king, remember in the beginning, Mordecai told Esther, and Esther told the king in the name of Mordecai. So, of course, she was like, well, listen, Mordecai said X, Y, and Z. So when they went to do the investigation and it was found that it was true, that those two chamberlains were put to death. So that's what he's talking about. So it says, the keepers, verse 3, and the king said, what honor and dignity have been done to Mordecai for this? So he's saying, listen, what happened to Mordecai for doing this thing? Did he get recognized in any way? In other words. Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, there is nothing done for him, meaning did nothing happen. Nobody told him, gave him nothing, nobody acknowledged him, in other words. And the king said, who is in the court? Now Haman was coming to the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. So remember, all the things that Haman had brewed in his mind and put together to put Mordecai to death, nobody knew about it. This was something that him and his wife had put together, and he sent that decree out before all those things happened. So it says, verse 5, and the king's servant said unto him, behold, Haman standing in the court. And the king said, let him come in. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighted to honor? So he asked Haman, listen, what should be done to the man that the king delighted to honor? Meaning, what should be done to the person that the king wants to give something to honor this person? So Haman, at that time, so now Haman thought in his heart, to whom would the king delight to do honor more than to myself? So after came, in the beginning where he said he had been promoted, so he done all these things. He gave Haman rulership power to go ahead and send out the decree. So he figured, listen. So then Esther sent him and brought him in to the banquet, just them two. He felt mighty obliged. She like, listen, this me. So with that, he thinking, okay, he got to be talking about me. Verse 7. And Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delighted to honor. Let's see. So then he began to talk. Let the royal apparel be brought, which the king uses to wear, meaning what he used to wear, let it be brought, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. And let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man withal whom the king delighted to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighted to honor. So all those things he wanted to be done to himself. So he thought that the king was talking about him, so this is what he wanted to be done. So this is what he decreed. Then the king said to Haman, make haste and take the apparel and the horse as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew. So he's saying, listen, go take that and do to Mordecai that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. Meaning, don't leave nothing out that you said should be done to that noble person. Then took Haman the apparel and the horse, and arrayed Mordecai, and brought him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaimed before him, thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighted to honor. And Mordecai came again to the king's gate, but Haman hasted to his house, mourning and having his head covered, meaning he was sick. He was so disappointed, he couldn't even face the people. So he covered his head. And Haman told Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh, his wife, unto him, if Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews, before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. And while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlain and hastened to bring Haman unto the banquet that Esther had prepared. Chapter 7, verse 1. So the king and Haman came to banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, what is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed, even to the half of the kingdom. Then Esther the queen answered and said, if I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bond women, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. So she going back and saying what was going on in the letters and stuff like that. Remember, Haman sent out those letters, and the king didn't even read the letters. He just gave him charge and say, hey, you know what? Whatever's going on, I'll let you handle it. You can handle it. You don't really need my approval. Just do what you're gonna do, and gave him the seal. So that's what happened. So because the king didn't know, this was Esther letting him know this is what was going on. Then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, who is he and where is he that does presume in his heart to do so? And Esther said, the adversary and enemy in this is this wicked Haman. That Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. And Harbonah, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, behold, also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him thereon. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified. So the things that Haman proclaimed to do to Mordecai and to the children of Israel, to proclaim, the king was made aware of the things that was supposed to be done to the children of Israel, and also that the things that he had sent out to be done to Mordecai, the king said, do unto him. So that's where I become a firm believer of what goes around comes around. So the things that you proclaim to do to somebody, they'll come back and get you. That's why it's very important that you make sure that you treat people the way you want somebody to treat you. So because there's something evil, that was evil somebody, an evil thing to make up on somebody. So the Most High made it to where it was done to Haman. Chapter 8, verse 1. So without the help of Queen Esther, none of this, probably would have been possible. If it wasn't for Esther listening to Mordecai and allowing Mordecai to lead and guide her and show her and teach her the things of the words of the Most High, it probably wouldn't have been done. Because look what happened to Vashti. She was a queen. She was the queen first. But when she got complacent in her own mind, she gave place to Satan, and she rebelled. And that's what made her get moved out. So we have to make sure that we don't give place to our own, our own lust, and begin not to listen one to another, whether it's our husbands or one to another, or from children to your parents. Because without the guidance of one another in anything that may be, we can fall short in any time even when we're not even aware. So we need to make sure that we are paying close attention and that we're listening to the instructions that's been coming out through one another. Because, like I said, without Esther, this might not have happened. Did Mordecai play a significant part? Yes, Mordecai did something that was very, noble. But at the same time, without the help of Esther, a woman, it may not have been done. So, to us women, if we have husbands in our life, we make sure that we learn and listen to them, because in this truth, we as women play a significant part. We play a significant role. And if we don't listen and we don't let them lead and guide us, our role can come to a halt within a matter of minutes. The same way with you girls that's coming up in this truth. If you don't take the guidance, if you don't take the counsel and advice and let your parents lead and guide you through your life before you get to adulthood, your life can come to a halt within a matter of seconds. It's very important that you listen to the guidance when it comes to serving the Lord, so that you'll know how to conduct yourself, because the Most High, through other people, show us what we need to do in our life on an everyday basis. That's why it's so important that we learn to listen to one another. Don't take it and okay, well, I don't really need that, and cast it behind us. But when it's something that a person is giving you that's going to help you in the situation, let that understanding, let that guidance be first that you put forth, because that could be the Most High telling you and showing you what you need to do. Had Esther not listened to Mordecai in all of these situations that she was put in, these different circumstances, that's what situations is, and different things in her life, in that instance, in that particular situation with her becoming the queen, the children of Israel would have came to nothing. Because it took nothing for Haman to go in and find favor in the sight of the king. The king didn't even take the time out to even read the letter that he put together. He just said, here, take it and seal it. He didn't even read it because he trusted Haman. So had Mordecai didn't, if he wouldn't have gave word back to Esther to let Esther know, remember, all this stuff was going on outside of the palace. Esther had no acknowledgement of it, just like the king didn't have no acknowledgement of it. But if she would have never listened to Mordecai and Mordecai said all those words back to her, it would have been a done deal for the children of Israel. That's the same way with us. We need to make sure that we're listening in our life to one another, to our husbands, children, to your parents, to one another, and also those that aren't your parents, the adults that's put into your life, that's put in this church, even if they're not your parents. You need to learn to listen to them because they play a significant role in your life. So that's chapter 8, verse 1. On that day did the king of Ahasuerus give the house of Haman, the Jews, enemy unto Esther the queen, and Mordecai came before the king. For Esther had told what he was unto her. So Esther went to the king and told her, this is who Mordecai is to me. And Mordecai to her was her cousin, but at that time became a father figure unto her because he raised her, he taught her. But did he say, oh, this is my cousin? No. Probably 9 times out of 10, she probably said, this is my father. because this is somebody who taught her, who raised her, who took care of her. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. So everything that Haman had control over, Mordecai had control over it now. And Esther spake again before the king, and fell down at his feet, and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman and Haman the Agagite, and his device that he had devised against the Jews. Then the king held out the golden scepter toward Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king, and said, If it please the king, and if I have found favor in thy sight, and the thing seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews which are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people, or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen, and to Mordecai the Jew, Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Jews. Write ye also for the Jews, as it liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's ring may no man reverse. So he gave Mordecai commandment to reverse the letter, to write it, because he had trust in it. At the same time, at the end of all of this, who did Esther and Mordecai trust in? They trusted in the Most High. They knew that the Most High, they dealt according to the law, statutes, and commandments. At the end of the day, they gave all praises, and all their faith went towards the Most High. That's why in the middle of the story, Esther said, listen, we're going to fast for 3 days and we're going to pray. Y'all do it and I'm going to do it. Because when every time that the children of Israel came together and started praying to the Most High always heard their cry. The Most High always came out and delivered the children from whatever thing that they needed. But the first thing that they needed to do was acknowledge the Most High in Christ and let it be known that it is the Most High's will to do whatever that needed to be done, and show reverence and respect to the Most High in Christ, to let the Most High in Christ know that you know what, you are in charge. So the same thing with us. We have to break ourselves and make sure that we show the respect that we need to show to the Most High in Christ. The only way we can do that is by applying the commandments. It's doing what's written. So, verse 9. Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, that is the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day, which is the 23rd day thereof. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews, and to the lieutenants, and to the deputies and rulers of the provinces, which are from India unto Ethiopia, and 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writings thereof, and unto every people after their language, and to the Jews according to their writings, and according to their language. And he wrote in the king Ahasuerus' name, and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by post on horseback, and riders on mules, camels, and young dromedaries, wherein the king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together, and to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all the power of the people and province that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil of them for a price. So he wrote that, Mordecai wrote that to tell the people, because even though the king sent out that decree to reverse it, some people probably would still disregard what the letter of the people of the king, and go forth and try to harm them anyway. Verse 12. Upon one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, the copies of the writing from a commandment to be given in every province was was published unto all people, and that the Jews should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So the posts that rode upon mules and camels went out, being hastened and pressed on by the king's commandment, and the decree was given at Shushan the palace. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them. Chapter 9, verse 1. Now in the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be put in execution, in the day that the enemies of the Jews hoped to have power over them, though it was turned to the contrary, that the Jews had rule over them that hated them, the Jews gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus to lay hand on such as sought their hurt, and no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all people. And all the rulers of the provinces and the lieutenants and the deputies and officers of the king helped the Jews, because the fear of Mordecai fell upon them. But Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went out throughout all the provinces. For this man Mordecai waxed greater and greater. Thus the Jews smote all their enemies, and the stroke of the sword, and slaughter, and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. And in Shushan the palace the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men. Let's jump down to, I'll keep reading. And in Shushan the palace the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men, and Parshatha, and Daphan, and Aspatha, and Paratha, and Adalia, and Aradiatha, and Parmashtha, and Arasha, and Ariada, and Vajazratha, the 10 sons of Haman, the sons of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews, slew they. So all of Haman's children, his 10 sons, they killed them too. But on the spoil laid they not their hand. On that day, the number of those that were slain in Shushan the palace were brought before the king. And the king said unto Esther the queen, the Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is thy petition, and it shall be granted thee? Or what is thy request further, and it shall be done? Then said Esther, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow also according unto this day's decree, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. And the king commanded it to be done, and the decree was given at Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. For the Jews that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day also of the month of Adar, and slew 300 men at Shushan. But on the prey they laid not their hands. But the other Jews that were in the king's provinces gathered themselves together and stood for their lives, and the rest from their enemies, and had rest from their enemies, and slew of their foes 70 and 5,000. But they laid not their hands on the prey. On the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th day of the same rested day, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. But the Jews that were at Shushan assembled together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th thereof, and on the 15th day of the same they rested, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore the Jews of the villages that dwelt in the unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month of Adar a day of gladness and feasting, and a good day, and of sending portions one to another. And Mordecai wrote these things and sent letters unto all the Jews that were in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, both nigh and far, to establish this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month of Adar and the 15th day of the same yearly, as the days wherein the Jews rested from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to joy, and from mourning into a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and joy, and of sending portions one to another, and gifts to the poor. And that gift to the poor was talking about those that didn't have, the Jews that was there that didn't have the things that was adequate enough to help, to participate in the feeding. Or participate in the feasting, And the Jews undertook to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them, because Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had devised against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast her, that is, the lot, to consume them and to destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device, which he devised against the Jews, should return upon his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows. Wherefore they call these days Purim, after the name of Pur. Therefore, for all the words of this letter and of that which they had seen concerning this matter, and which had come unto them, the Jews ordained and took upon them and upon their seed, and upon all such as joined themselves unto them, so as it should not fail, that they would keep these 2 days according to their writing and according to their appointed time every year, and that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city, and that these days of Purim should not fail from among the Jews, nor the memorial of them perish from their seed. Verse 29, Then Esther the queen, the daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai the Jew, wrote with all authority to confirm this second letter of Purim. And he sent the letters unto all the Jews to the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus with words of peace and truth, to confirm these days of Purim in their times appointed, according to Mordecai the Jew and Esther the queen had enjoined them, and as they had decreed for themselves and for their seed the matter of the fasting and their cry. And the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was written in the book. So that is why we keep the Feast of Purim, which is today and will end today. For those sisters that, I hope that this was edifying to you all, to add to your understanding of what Purim is. And hopefully next year or the year before, year after, we learn to read this and read it more and more with understanding to help us establish the Feast of Purim. So again, I want to say, I hope that you ladies had a wonderful Feast of Purim, wonderful day of rest. And with that, we'd like to say, before we go, let's get Mark 14. Which is another example of another woman that an example for us women. Mark 14:3. Mark 14, verse 3. And being in Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, as he sat at meat, there came a woman having an alabaster box of ointment of spikenard, very precious. And she brake the box and poured it on his head. And there were some that had indignation within themselves and said, why was this waste of the ointment made? For it might have been sold for more than 300 pence and have been given to the poor. And they murmured against her. And Jesus said, let her alone. Why trouble ye her? She hath wrought a good work on me. For ye have the poor with you always, and whensoever ye will, ye may do them good. But me ye have not always. She has done what she could. She is come aforehand to anoint my body to the burying. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached throughout the whole world, this also that she hath done shall be spoken of for a memorial of her. So with that, we'd like to say shalom, and I hope that all of our sisters in our everyday walk is making some type of example out of themselves and making and ask the Lord through the name of Christ that He give us all the spirit to sing someone's heart to come forth and change the way that they may think or the way they may be doing things according to the word of Christ. So with that, we'd like to say shalom.
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 Any questions, sisters?
Not for me. It was very clear.
Say it again, I'm sorry.
I said not for me.
Miss Anna, are you still there?
Yes. You can hear me?
Yes, I can.
I said that not for me. It was very clear.
Okay.
Okay.
Praise to the Most High in Christ. I thank you ladies for joining.
Thank you,
I
too.
apologize for not giving. I figured you ladies would remember that it was that it was today. I have been kind of tired, I guess. Sometimes when I try to come down with some type of sinus or my allergies begin to bother me, it makes my body break down and get tired. But anyway, I give all praises to the Most High Christ for allowing sisters to come, to show up and listen. And I hope all is well, and I'm glad that everybody understood. So I just wanted to, have the opportunity to go through that because, like I said, that was a story that, it's kind of touching to me because it came through a hand of a woman.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So it gives us, something to look forward to. It gives us something to, to kind of increase our faith.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and of course, the Sabbath class will start at about 2:15. What time Sabbath class start? 2:15? Yeah. Well, it'll start about 2:15. So if you ladies need the code for that, or if you wanted to attend that, just let me know.
Can you text me the code?
This Veronica.
This Anna.
Anna. Okay. The code for the Sabbath class is 664-662.
664-662. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. And most of the name of Christ bless you.
You too.
Veronica, you there?
Yeah, I'm serious. It's the same code as last time, right?
Okay. Did you get the code?
Is it the same one from last time?
664-662.
Yeah, I have it.
Okay. So if you want to, call back in and sit in for that class, you're more than welcome as well. Like I said, that one starts at about 2:15. So I'll give you a chance to get a break, and that'll give us a chance to get a break and get something to drink because I'm like truly thirsty.
Okay.
And Lord's will, I'll talk with you. I'll speak with you, Lord's will, after the Sabbath.
Okay. All right.
All right. Shalom, sis.
All right. Shalom.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You're making